stop fighting for me. Your love is winning me over. Your heart is pulling me closer. Your love is winning me over. Your heart is pulling me closer. You will never stop fighting for me, fighting for me. Every word is a promise you keep. You will never stop fighting for me. When I can't fight for myself, every word is a promise you keep. 'Cause you love me like nobody. Stand up in the darkest night when I'm sleeping. Stay by my side. You will never stop fighting for me. You will never stop fighting for me.
Walking, broken, innocence stolen. Shadows hold you down till you can't breathe. You look for reasons to pick up all the pieces, but still you tell yourself the hurt's too deep. Would you believe me if I said you're not beyond repair? Would you believe me if I told you that I've been right there? I've seen the light coming to my darkest wounds. I can tell you, friend, that His love heals wounds. Look into my heart, let it be the proof. I'm only standing here 'cause His love heals wounds. Freedom, breakthrough, open arms around you. Just like how it feels to come back home. Endless redemption, love without dimension, restoring all the hope you thought was gone. Oh, I've seen the light coming to my darkest rooms. I can tell you, friend, that His love heals wounds. Look into my heart, let it be the proof. I'm only standing here 'cause His love heals wounds. Yeah, His love heals wounds. Would you believe me if I said you're not beyond repair? Would you believe me if I told you that I've been right there? Would you believe me if I said you're not beyond repair? Oh, would you believe me if I told you that I've been right there? I've seen the light coming to my darkest rooms. I can tell you, friends, that His love heals wounds. Look into my heart, let it be the proof. I'm only standing here 'cause His love heals wounds. Yeah, His love heals wounds.
escape disappointment, can't avoid the delay, but I don't have to make feeling down and defeated the place that I stay. Gonna rise to the moment, gonna speak to the waves, gonna push back the doubt that keeps dragging me down when I can't find a way. Don't need to see it, I saw you to believe it. From my breakthrough, before you even move on, make a way. I was standing, faith, I saw you walk by faith. From my breakthrough, live by faith. Before you, oh, I believe, I believe, I believe. Standing, faith, I saw you see by faith. From my breakthrough, receive by faith. Before you, oh, I believe, I believe, I believe. It's a season for healing, it's a season for change, to see miracles happen that no one can fathom as heaven invades. And it's more than a feeling, and it's anchored in praise. And when it's the darkest, it reaches the farthest and opens a way. Don't need to see it, I saw you, oh, to believe it. From my breakthrough, before you even move on, make a way. Yeah. I was standing, faith, I saw you walk by faith. From my breakthrough, live by faith. Before you, oh, I believe, I believe, I believe. Standing, faith, I saw you see by faith. From my breakthrough, receive by faith. Before you, oh, I believe, I believe, I believe. This is how blind men get their sight. This is how dead men start to rise. This is how small things multiply. Nothing's impossible, nothing's impossible. This is where oceans have to part. This is where light cuts through the dark. This is where I see who you are. Nothing's impossible, nothing's impossible. Stir my faith, stir my faith. I was standing, faith, walk by faith. Yes, I will. Live by faith. Yes, I will. I believe, I believe, I believe. Standing, faith. Let the church rise up. Let the people of God rise up. Faith. I believe, I believe, I believe. I was standing, faith. We're so quick to point a finger, we judge things from our point of view. The things that we say, the trouble it makes, it hurts you and it hurts me too. This is such a fallen world we live in. It's really not the way it's supposed to be. What if we could see each other different? It'd probably change everything. We're all broken people. Don't we all need Jesus? Every moment of our lives, 24, 3, 6, 5, our human is equal. Don't we all have our weakness? Hey, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody needs that grace. We all need Jesus. Don't we all need Jesus? Oh, we all, we all, we all, we all.
Everybody needs a savior, even the ones who think they don't. We got stuff we hide deep down inside. There's so much that we don't show. Yeah, it's just
this
the
is
whole world we live in.
This is here.
Really not the way it's supposed to be. Isn't that the beauty of redemption?
since everybody's quiet in here, I might as well just like fill the time. I'm a new dad of the last year. Pretty excited. Yesterday kind of freaked me out a little bit. It was the first time my son got on a plane, not by himself, of course, with his mom, but I was just like, man, I was like, is this the first transition that I'm a part of? And then I was just like, no, you're talking to college students, Mom. Don't get in your head too much. Okay, and so, yes, this is the parent session. I like to call it the student success parent session because, like, the only person that's talking to you guys in this space is the student success person. So, like, I just, like, hijacked the name. This is the student success parent session. And so I'll just be chatting with you guys for the next let's say 37 minutes. And then, you know, sporadically you guys will be able to ask different questions and stuff like that. And so I'm a huge questions guy just because, like, I'm one of those people who a long time ago I had to realize that what I had to say was not that important. And so, like, if you guys have questions, like, please ask questions. How many people, like, this is your first student? Am I too loud for you guys? Am I good? How many for you guys, this is like your first student in college? Ooh, this is super exciting. I get goosebumps because now I just get to, now what I have to say is actually more important than I thought when I walked into the room. All right, how many, this is number 2 for you. All right, ooh, first one at Huntington? First student at Huntington? All right, sweet. How many, like, this is third, like I am you're veterans at this point. You guys want to switch? You know, because, so yeah, this is the student success session. And so my goal by the end of this session is for you guys to be experts on knowing that Huntington cares about your student. Not that you guys are the experts on what Huntington has to offer, right? But experts on knowing that, like, if there's any college in the state of Indiana that has your students back, it is Huntington University. Largely because, like, it's super important, right? My role outside of making sure students are successful is like internal institutional research, right? And so, like, attrition reporting, making sure that, like, hey, if there's a department that is struggling with retention, or if the institution is struggling with retention, like, where are the holes, right? But also, if our retention numbers are low, I'm also responsible, which sounds like a lot of pressure, but it's really not because we're really good at what we do. But part of that is, like, understanding higher ed trends and, like, okay, what does student care look like? What does retention numbers look like? And, you know, of the last 3 to 5 years, the big wigs, like the people who is like, we like nerd out on, like, the Chronicle of Higher Education or into higher ed, they say, like, parent engagement is the way to keep your retention numbers high. And so, like, as a parent, I get to say that now, it's like crazy. As a parent and the person who works at Huntington University, like, this is super cool to be able to tell you about some of the things that we have for your students, but also some of the things that we have for parents to be involved, right? And when I say involved, I want to be sure that you know, like, there won't be any nights that we invite you to stay in the residence halls, you know what I'm saying? There may be nights where you can come and visit, right? But you can't spend the night. And I think that's a big caveat because, like, one, you're going to be like, I pay all this money and the room smells like this. And then, you know, and you guys got jobs of your own. So, of course, you don't want to spend the night in the residence hall. And so we'll just jump right into it. And again, if I say something that's confusing because, like, I'm about these jokes, or if you're just like, hey, can you tell me more about this? Like, please feel free to just like, hey, Isaac, can you talk more about this, right? I know that I'm also the person that's stopping you guys from going to lunch. And so, like, I'm going to do as much as I can to just, like, make sure you don't go too early because now you're mad because, like, now you have to wait outside and get lunch, or make sure also that it's just like, is he giving me a fair chance to be the first person in line? I'm also that person. And so we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I am the director of student success. That is my son Uriah, right? He's like super cute, right? Just like comparison. Like, I'm at the age in which, like, my friends are also having kids, and so I'm just like, print out a photo of their kid, put it next to Uriah's face and just like, nah, he's still really cute. And so I'm the director of student success. And what that means for you guys is I oversee the Office of Student Success. And so student success to Huntington University in a nutshell is a question. Is there a barrier to student success, right? And we think individual students, we think a group of students. Is there a barrier? And it's our responsibility to figure out what those barriers are and then provide solutions. And so we work with students individually. And so what that may look like is a student will come to our office and say like, hey, Isaac, I'm struggling in this one class. Or a student can say like, hey, Isaac, I'm struggling in these 5 classes, which is a large problem because like when a student's struggling in 5 classes, it's like after midterms, 2 weeks before the semester is over. And it's like, all right, let's sit down and like, let's figure out what those solutions are. You'll hear me say that a lot until like, it'll be super redundant, but you'll memorize what I do by the end of the session. And so even if there's a big group of students, right? And so like, if there are multiple students that are struggling, and so like a couple years ago, our commuter students were just like, hey, there's not enough here for us. The institution needs to be better, right? And so we created this ad hoc commuter team, and we're just like, okay, we started surveying students. We updated their student spaces and other spaces they identified, just like, hey, we hang out a lot here. And so like, if you go, wait, before I say this, we are not responsible for the hub renovations. But there have been updates to the hub and as well as the commuter student space over in Low Brand, but they also made sure they updated other communal spaces where commuters do a lot of things in. So like in the science building, there are different lounges there. We make sure that we take care of those spaces because we know that our commuters spend a lot of time in those spaces. We updated some of our policies, some of our COVID policies even were impacted by what commuters were going through last year, right? And so like part of the big thing was, part of the COVID restrictions was common spaces, right? Common space microwaves, common space refrigerators, and different things like that. And so we took out all the microwaves around campus that were for like big spaces. Well, the commuters come here, and a lot of them may have a class at 10 o'clock, and then their next class isn't until 3. And so if they don't have a meal plan, like what are they going to eat if the microwaves aren't open, right? And so we, leverage some of the policies that the FDA gave us in our dining commons team. They helped us out and say like, hey, like if a student needs something microwave, they updated their sanitation policies to say like if a student brings outside food, they wipe down whatever container or they transfer the food so that their food can get heated up. And so that's something that our team does, even if it's as small as a microwave, or it's just like, hey, this professor is being unfair to me, and just like, all right, let's dive in and let's see what that looks like. We don't have a lot of that, but when that happens, literally any obstacle that a student faces on campus, to a point, it comes to our office, and then we work with the necessary departments or work with the necessary professors to see if we can provide solutions to those spaces. Also oversee orientation. Orientation, I'm super excited because like, we're not going to be a COVID-free space. We're going to be a COVID-friendly space, right? And so, like, we're not going to pretend like COVID does not exist. I don't know if you guys are into the NBA, but Chris Paul's in the protocol in 10 days, which is going to mess up some plans that I had for my own life in watching the Western Conference Finals that I don't think anybody else here cares about, but it's okay. But we're going to be, we can go back. Yeah, and so we're going to just like make sure that it's still friendly because we know we still have students who may have autoimmune deficiencies and different things like that. And we also have students who just like, I don't want to be elbow to elbow with a bunch of people that I don't know, right? And so I'll oversee orientation. We're still going to have a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be available for our students as well as our parents. We just made some new things based off of some of the things that we did last year, but also reinventing some things that we're just like, hey, this would be way more fun than what we did it, and then we're just gonna dive in. I'm super excited. I've also worked in higher ed for close to 10 years, and so Huntington University is not the first institution that I have worked at, and so I always say that to say, not because it's like, someone said like, is it hard for you to keep a job? I was like, no, that is not true. Every place that I worked at, they love me. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's true. And so I say that to say, is it's like, for your students' experience, it's always super, super important that, you guys and your students as you invest in Huntington University, because like the real story is like as parents, you're sitting here because you pay the bills and you don't want to send your student here because it's like whatever information you get, I'm going to get. And so your students aren't here, but you're going to like drill them when they get into the car and just like, all right, what classes are you signed up for? Like what dorm do you live in? And different things like that. It's important to get like the best experience. And so like, I'm not saying that I'm the best student success person, even though I believe that. But what I am saying is like, all of my experience I'm bringing in I'm pouring to your students, and like that's how we update a lot of our policies. And I would say the same for a lot of different departments, like our student life department. And a lot of our professors are the top of kind of their profession. They have a diverse set of experience, and their only experience is not Huntington, right? And so like your next kid, right, if it's just like, man, I'm only talking to people who are from Indiana Wesleyan, that only know Indiana Wesleyan, that haven't been anywhere else, like this isn't the experience I want my student to have. I want my student to have like a well-versed experience from well-versed period. I'm just not bagging on Indiana Wesleyan, but it's true about Indiana Wesleyan. And I oversee the different parent groups. And so we'll talk through some of the different parent groups that we have here at Huntington University and like how you guys can be involved at Huntington. Super cool, a lot of cool opportunities popping up that I'm super excited to tell you guys about. And as we kind of navigate like what Huntington has to offer for students, it's also important to say like what Huntington also has to offer you guys. And so if you're into the Facebook thing, the first group I'll tell you about is the Facebook parent group. And so we have a lot of registered students, we have a lot of parents of alumni, we have a lot of parents of current students who are a part of that group. And so that group is usually the first place where you guys get information. And so I'll post information. All right, can I get a microphone? Because I think like every time I breathe, it like pops up into this microphone. Can I get one of these? All right, cool. The first place it pops up is in the parent group. And so like last year, for example, I don't know if some of you guys were a part of, you know, some of the preview students joined. We kind of had like a town hall thing for our parents. And so the first group that filled up those limited spaces were the Facebook parent group. And then we sent out emails to some of our current students, and then we sent out emails to our prospective students. And so usually when it comes to like the capacity stuff, that Facebook parent group is the first place that we would send like different invites or let you guys know about different things that are happening on campus. And so if there's a parent weekend that I know that we can't like publish on our website or anything like that, it kind of goes to that parent group. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, and so student success overall, like I said, it's a one-stop shop for student advocacy, right? So if a student does not know where to go in terms of like a certain issue, we send them to the Office of Student Success, right? And so I am not the financial aid person, but if a student is confused about like their financial aid and they don't know where the financial aid office is, or they have a specific question that they want to ask the financial aid person, people just send them to my office anyway. And I'm just like, okay. But it's one of those spaces in which like issues with the battery, and I just like apparently just needed a new battery. And so I'm in the middle of the mall charging my phone because I had a battery issue, right? And I'm just like, hey, like something's wrong with my phone. I don't know if it's getting ready to explode, but it's always hot, right? And so like, can you walk me through? So I'm on the phone with AT&T. AT&T sends me back to the customer service person because I was on the phone with billing. And then the customer service person sent me to the IT person because like they couldn't tell me what was wrong with my phone. And then the IT person sends me back to the customer service person because the customer service person was supposed to be the person to get me a new battery for my phone. And so the customer service person didn't know whether or not I was supposed to pay for the battery or whether or not I was supposed to get a new battery for free. And so they sent me back to the billing person, and the billing person just told me, hey, 10 steps away, you can just walk into the AT&T store and they'll replace the battery for you for free. And so like I basically talked to 10 different people just to get a new battery and walk 10 steps to my right to get my phone fixed, right? Simple fix, right? This is not that generation of student, right? You bounce that person to two other people, and it's just like, okay, no one can figure my problem. I'm talking to too many people, I quit, right? That's basically our generation of students. And maybe they don't quit, but like the solution is not what they wanted it to be. It's not fast enough for them and different things like that. And so the one-stop shop for student advocacy is my office, because like a lot of times it's not just like, okay, you just go to this office and they'll figure out your problem, right? It's just like, okay, just talk to student success. And what we do is we do a lot of resource mapping, which we'll talk about in a bit. And so again, like we help students succeed. And so we equip students with the resources to be successful, right? And so if a student runs into an issue, they come to my office and we talk about all them issues, right? A student walks to my office, I got like 20 questions for that student. It's just like, hey, like I'm struggling in classes. And I'm just like, okay, have you been to class in 3 weeks, right? Are you doing your homework? Do you know how to work Moodle? Do you know how to work these things? And they answer the questions. I'm just like, all right, here's what we can do to just like solve your problem, and let's create a plan for you to be successful, right? And a lot of times the issues aren't in the classroom. It's just like, hey, like I'm struggling socially and I can't go to my RA, or I'm struggling, with my mental health, but I don't necessarily want to go to counseling, right? We navigate those spaces so that we can actually help students be successful, because I am not going to treat your student like every other student at Huntington University, right? Individual students have individual needs. And so when the student comes to my office, we talk about the individual needs that they have, right? We can't send a student every time a student says like, hey, I'm struggling to cell biology. Can you just hook me up with a tutor? I'm just like, is a tutor cell biology, or should you not be a pre-med person? Right? That's a question that we have to ask a lot of our students. If it is just cell biology, all right, let's dive in, because like cell biology is a hard class, right? And so like we ask those questions so we can help students be successful, not just in the short term, but also in the long term, right? We're not just like drilling students so that like when they go to class, it's like, okay, I talked to Isaac, so I'm square with my professor now. It's just like students may have questions that are bigger than just like one class. Students may have vocation questions and different things like that, and it's just like, all right, let's work through this. Equity is also a huge issue with our students, and we're not just talking about like financial equity, right? We have some classes that that haven't changed their syllabus in 10 years, right? And so like it may be difficult for a student to get the information in a class because like we're still reading the 4th edition of a history book that happened in 2003. There's so much history that happened since 2003, right? Especially since a lot of our kids don't even know what 9/11 is, right? Isn't that crazy? It's like make me feel old, but they live with you guys. And so I'm not going to ask how you guys feel now that your students are going to college. And so we want to provide equity to students, both inside the classroom as well as outside the classroom, right? We have students on our campus who it's just like, hey, I'm a commuter student, but I can't afford a meal plan, right? And so we try to come up with creative things in which like, okay, like you can work with Sodexo for an hour out of the week, and you can have all of your meals covered if you can't afford a meal plan, right? We have students who they may be commuter students, but it's just like, hey, I'm struggling getting to class every day, and so like we need to figure out something else so I don't flunk out of Huntington, right? And we have students who are just like, I don't understand any of this Huntington stuff, because where I come from, like we have students who come from all over the place. Where I come from, culturally, everything is weird to me, right? And so it's just like, all right, how can we provide equity to those students? And I'm not saying I have this like super big budget to figure out all those issues for students, but what we do is we partner with a lot of different people to make sure that like every student has the resources to be successful at Huntington University, right? And sometimes, like, it's about having that conversation of just like, maybe Huntington's not for you, right? We try not to have a lot of those conversations, but in like pure transparency, like student success, to me, the director of student success, doesn't always end in Huntington University, right? We want to be honest with every student that comes in our office, right? It's just like, if you're having these many struggles, let's map out like, what do you want from your college experience, right? And a lot of that times it's just like, all right, let's get mom, let's get dad on the phone so we can have like actual conversations, right? And for some students, it's like, hey, the only reason I'm at Huntington University is because Huntington's cheap, for me than it is to go somewhere else. And just like, all right, let's have those conversations, right? Huntington's a Christian institution, and we know that all of our students aren't Christian, right? And so we try to help our students navigate some of those Christian conversations, or help navigate some of their struggles with chapel, or help them navigate some of their struggles with, hey, my biology professor is talking about creation in a way that like I'm uncomfortable with. It's just like, all right, how can we help navigate some of those conversations? Let's sit down with your professor. And to us, that's providing a lot of that equity for students who come in and they're not Christians, or students who come in and their parents can't afford everything that other parents can afford. And so like we try to give students access to equal resources regardless of what their background is before they come to Huntington. And we also have different committees. And so we have two committees, the Committee of Student Success and the Behavior Assessment Team. The Committee of Student Success, for the most part, we deal with if a student has gone missing from class for 3 weeks, what happened to that student, right? So there are RDs on that committee, the dean of students is on that committee. We have a bunch of people on that committee, and it's just like, okay, how can we help serve this student in the classroom, right? This is the second time I use that example, but we don't just have students who are just like always disappearing for 3 weeks, right? Usually like a professor is just like, hey, I haven't seen this student in 2 classes. Can you tell us about that student? And so we'll go to the RDs and we'll just basically sit down and come up with a plan for like, okay, what's going on with this student? How can we support the student? A lot of times if a student's not showing up to class, especially for first year students, is because like they quit, right? They don't have like a growth mindset. They're just like, hey, I don't know how to withdraw from this class, and so I'm just like not going to show up anymore, right? And so we work with those students to either get them withdrawn for a class, get them a tutor, or see what else is going on. Maybe it's an instance in which like it's a commuter student that class is at 8 o'clock in the morning. And the commuter student's like, man, it's a 45-minute drive. I don't know if I can make it. The behavior assessment team is a different team, right? And so if you've ever taken an education class or even a psychology class, they talk about Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? Our students who have needs that are just like beyond the classroom. So maybe we have students with like food insecurities, or we have students with like mental health needs. Those students essentially go to the behavior assessment team, right? That's like our secret BAT team is what we call it. It's like our secret team that people don't really know about. But again, like if a student is having a need, and so like say a student goes over on bereavement leave because their cat died, right? There's like, we know that this student may need additional supports here at Huntington. And so we talk about what those supports are for individual students. We talk about like, okay, if this student is going to be gone for 2 or 3 weeks, then we need to communicate with professors that this student is going to be gone for 2 to 3 weeks, but also communicate what is our plan for when this student comes back, right? Because my dog, his name is Atticus. We've been boys for 9 years now, and if Atticus dies, it's not going to be like super nice when I come back to work, right? My grandpa is getting up there in age, right? He's touching 95. He's been a boy for almost 30 years. Man, I said that out loud too. It's okay. And so it's just like, I probably won't be coming back to work. And when I come back to work, it's probably going to be like a sad day, right? And so like, what is the plan for when I come back, right? And so like socially, how are we taking care of the student in the residence halls? How are we taking care of the student otherwise, right? And so like missing 3 weeks of class is a huge deal. And so like, what's our plan for when the student comes back? Because like, not only is the student 3 weeks behind, but the student also has to catch up to where his class are now. And so like, does that mean that a student gets an extension in the class? And so that's working with the professor through those committees. And so, individualizing the student experience, we resource map for students, and we also track students. If a student comes into my office because like, hey, like I was walking to class, I fell down the stairs, and I got this massive scrape on my arm, that student now gets tracked, right? It's like a spider web even, right? That student gets tracked. And it's like in the classroom, socially, every student that we work through gets tracked, right? It could be a student that could just be as small as like, hey, Isaac, like I'm really struggling in the residence halls. Like, I don't know who to go to. It's like, have you talked to your RA? Their RA takes care of them socially. They're thriving and different things like that. But like they get flagged so that every week I'm tracking their success, both in the classroom and through some of those committees. And so like if a student's struggling real bad, like we know so that we don't have to worry about a student 4 weeks down the line and say like, hey, this student just came across my radar for something small. 3 weeks, I still know whether or not they're doing well in classes and whether or not they're doing well in the residence hall from the people who have contact with them, right? We're not going to say like every time something happens, we're going to alarm like a RA who's also 20 years old and they're trying to figure out their early life crisis, right? But we're going to flag so that the people who need to know. So if something pops up, it's just like, okay, like somewhere along the line, we knew that something may happen, and we work with the students to assure that we can be ready to respond to that individual student's needs. Because the last thing, at least for me, when I drop Uriah off at daycare, is just like the last thing I need to know is that whoever was responsible for him didn't know, like, he moves all the time. And so, like, yeah, he may get a scrape in the parking lot because, like, he started walking when he was 10 months old. And so, like, I need you to know that he may fall, and he may get a scrape, and that you need to put a Band-Aid on his knee, right? I don't want him coming home with blood down his leg. And so it's just like the same thing with our students here. If there's something that pops up, the people who need to know so they can respond properly to your student and to your student needs. That goes for professors, that goes for the different RDs, but we're just not putting every student's business out there for people who don't need to know information, right? I also don't want to get sued, and so like I abide by the laws of FERPA. We can go to the next slide. Okay, and so here's the part where like everybody like pulls out their phones and stuff. Okay, so our parent group, you just go to Facebook and you type in just like HU parent. That is just like how to join that Facebook parent group. And this is a way to stay up to date on campus happenings. You're gonna walk there and just be like, man, no one said anything since May, really? That's because like school's over and you know, there's not a lot happening that you guys are invited to, unless you guys want to sit in some of the meetings that we had last week. A terrible way to spend your week. And so you can just join the HU parent group. And I know some people are just like, yeah, Facebook groups are my thing. We also have the From the Forest family newsletter. It's a family newsletter because we know all our students don't live with their parents or something like that. Some of our students may be independent or living with the uncle or cousin or something like that. But the From the Forest family newsletter is a newsletter that we send on the second Tuesday of every month. And so that's where we put all of our notes from different departments and different things like that so that you guys can stay up to date. And so like a story from the Forest family newsletter, okay, a story from the newsletter is that in March, FAFSAs were due for the state of Indiana. So if you were a resident of the state of Indiana and you have, your student has a scholarship, the 21st Century Scholarship, or I forget what the other scholarship was called, but it's basically a $10,000 scholarship, right? And so those FAFSAs were due in March. And so in that March letter, our financial aid office basically put in the blurb, it was like, hey, like the deadline is March 16th. You need to have your FAFSA submitted by March 16th. If you have not had it submitted by March 16th, then like you're going to lose out on the scholarship, right? And so what ends up happening is that March 16th date comes around, I think it was a Monday, that March 16th date comes around and a lot of our students either miss that deadline for one reason or the other, right? Indiana then extended that deadline to I think like May 16th or something like that. So in the same letter the next month, all the parents who received that letter got the notification that like the deadline has been extended, right? I don't know what $10,000 looks like to you guys, but like that's a huge deal for a lot of our students. And we don't send parents those emails because of FERPA, right? We don't say like, hey, your student did not fill out the FAFSA information, right? You may be able to call if you got the green light from your student, but like we really don't send those out to parents like students in that. And like I don't know if you guys pay attention to like higher ed data like myself, but like 50% of our students don't read emails from the institution, right? And so like we're banking on like out of our 900 students, 450 students are going to read that email, right? And so the other 450 students, they may miss that information if they're responsible for communicating that information to their parent. And so the From the Forest Family Newsletter is a space where you guys can get a lot of that information. You can get information about like events, like homecoming. You can get information about our semesterly town halls with parents and other information like that. And so if you can go to the next slide, I think it's on the next slide. This is how, so if you want to take a picture or something, this is how you can subscribe to that family newsletter. It's just huforms.formstack.com/forms/from-the-forest. If you can remember that, you may have a job here at Huntington. But you can feel free to just take a picture of that. It's super easy. Again, that comes out on the second Tuesday of every month. But in addition, if you sign up within the next week, on Friday, I'll send you guys the version of the newsletter that we sent out this past month. So if you subscribe by Friday, I'll send you guys that information. And it's basically just a form that asks for your name, email, and like where your student is. Is your student a alum, prospective student, a registered student, and different things like that. All right, you can go to the next slide. Okay, and so this summer we started our parent council. And so the parent council is just made up of different parents of students at Huntington University. And that council, that entire council is basically made up of parents who just want Huntington University to be better, right? It's made up of parents who are just like, hey, like this communication was terrible, right? Usually like people email us to say like, hey, this is terrible, do better anyway. And so now we have an official committee to let us know, just like it is your job to tell us like how to do better, right? And so that's starting this summer. We're excited for that team, and that's something that is just like super, super fun because it's also a space in which like that council is also going to be in charge of different programs and events specifically for parents. And so, you know, yeah, just excited. There's not a lot to say. I'm just excited. And through contact. And so like, I am super like transparent. And I also like people to be transparent with me, right? Because like, I'm one of those people, it's just like, unless you're telling me I'm doing a bad job, I'm just going to assume we're doing a good job, right? And some of you are just like, I don't like your hat. And I'm just like, okay. But like through contact. And so I'm super, super open to parent contact, right? And that's just like kind of how I make myself available both to students and to parents as well. Because like, here's the thing that like, you know, people don't say out loud when it comes to institutions is that like we do everything that we do for students, right? I have my job because I love specifically working with students, right? I'm just in the space where I have the energy for it. And so you guys send your students to us. We say that we care about your students. And so it's just like, all right, then we need to care for your students. You guys are also you know, your students on the hook for $36,000. How they pay it at Huntington University is one way or another. But like, I've never invested $36,000 in anything that I don't know when I'm getting in return, right? And so like this space in which we put parents to the side and say like, hey, like this is your student's experience. It's true, but kind of true, right? Because again, like I've never given anyone $36,000 and just like, hey, go have a good time for 4 years, right? And so like, this is a space in which like, I understand that you guys may have questions about like what's going on at Huntington, or you guys have made insights in with your student that are just like, hey, I don't know if I'm getting the proper information from my student in regards to deadlines or in regards to classes and stuff like that. There are a few laws that we got to follow, obviously, right? But you can contact me, right? If you're just like, hey, I got some questions about some things that are going on at Huntington, or like, hey, Isaac, I need you to be aware of some things that you may not be aware of. It's just like, please, like, give me a call, shoot me an email. You can message me on Facebook, right? People tend to do that, and like, I don't necessarily bat my eye to it, right? But it's just something that people do. Because it's super, super important for you to like have data, have information, have someone who's going to talk to you and then talk back, right? I don't think I'm above parent communication. I hope no one else thinks that either. And so if you want to contact me, please contact me. Before we jump to the next slide with the contact information, during orientation, we have 2 hours in which you guys will have a chance to ask different members of Huntington University different questions. And so like President Emberton's going to be here, a bunch of our vice presidents will also be here, as well as different stakeholders to the parent, to the student experience, right? And so we'll have our dean of students, we'll have some RDs, we'll have our chief of police here. It will basically what we call Parent University here at Huntington University. So during orientation, during movement day, August 26th, there will be a Parent U meeting where you guys will have like that face-to-face interaction with different members of the Huntington administration, and that's a huge way for parents to partner with us, because like again, like that gives you insight on kind of what we're doing, right? One of the number one things that like students leave institutions for is because it's like there's nothing ever going on, right? So you guys will get that information, but you guys will also have an opportunity to work through different people who say like, here's some things that we have going on, right? And so that Parent U is going to be from 2:30 to 4:30 on August 26th. Your students will receive an orientation newsletter throughout the summer, basically giving them a checklist of things to like work through, and also giving them like, all right, here's some information that's super important for you to know as a person who's coming here early for orientation. And so August 26th from 2:30 to 4:30 is when that basically parent orientation will happen with different administrators at Huntington University. And so the next slide has my contact information. And so if you want to take a picture of that, feel free. There are also cards. There are 2 chairs, 2 stools in the back. And so if you want to take a picture and grab a card, like you can definitely do so. That's on those 2 back stools back there. And so is there another slide? Oh, awesome. Well, that's the end of my slideshow. And so again, like super, super excited that you guys have elected to have your students here and come and attend Huntington University. Again, like if I didn't like my job, I probably wouldn't be here, right? Because like, man, the last year was tough, and I'm sure it was tough for you guys with a lot of the changes. I promised myself that I wasn't going to say the C word up here, and so like it was just super tough, and it's one of those spaces and that like we're super, super excited to figure out what normalcy looks like now, and we're super, super excited to see what that means for your students that you guys have elected to bring us back here. Again, I'm not above parent contact. I love parent contact, and so if you guys have questions for the group, we'll take some time. How much time do we have? 5 minutes? So we'll take about 5 minutes to take some questions that you guys may have for us. Or me, I guess.
My daughter will be commuting. I want her to want to live in a dorm sometime because that's where you get the best experience.
Mm-hmm.
Will she be allowed, if like if she makes some friends on campus, will she be allowed in their dorm rooms, like to see how people are in that setting and maybe want to do it later?
Yeah, and so her question for everybody was, her daughter's a commuter student. Will she be able essentially to come into the residence halls and inside the rooms and different things like that? I believe the answer to that question is yes, right? Even last year, the commuter students, there was an understanding that the commuter students were, I thought I was getting ready to fall off this thing for a second. That would have been all bad, especially y'all got y'all phones ready for these screens and stuff like that. Somebody would have recorded it and not asked if I was okay either. And so, yes, the answer to your question is yes. So this past year, there was this belief that like commuter students weren't allowed in the residence halls, and that was true-ish, right? Commuter students weren't allowed into the rooms because of like the COVID protocols, but even the commuters were allowed into the common spaces and into the lounges and different things like that. A lot of our students do rely on like the residence halls to connect with different students who are on campus. They have like some open dorm rules and different things like that, but yeah, 100% students are allowed into the residence halls with their peers. Yeah.
If she makes friends, will they be allowed to invite her into the room?
Mm-hmm. Yep. They are allowed in the rooms. If, it's like vampire rules, what I'm saying? You can't come in here without an invite, but you can definitely come. Does anyone else have a question? Oh, man. Okay. And so, like, we have a few more minutes. And so, usually I get super excited about this question, and I'll pretend somebody asks. It's like, can students get jobs here at Huntington University? Yes, students can get jobs here at Huntington University. We have a really, really robust work study program in which like students can just like sign up for a job. A lot of our students have multiple jobs because they'll take one job that pays them for 5 hours a week, and then they'll take another job that pays them for 15 hours a week, and they basically balance that out. We pay students. Some jobs pay students more than others, right? And so if you work for the admissions office, I think admissions pays their students like $9 an hour or something like that. I have the best, just saying, I have the best, student jobs on campus, and they only get paid $7.25 an hour. And so there are different jobs across campus that pay more than others, but students have like a really cool opportunity to get jobs at Huntington University, as well as some of our other campus partners. And so we even have some of our nursing majors who work up at Parkview, the hospital across the street, getting hours and getting paid and different things like that. And so students do have an opportunity to not mooch off of you guys for 10 months out of the year through some of the jobs that we have here on campus. And so some jobs, like a student can go work as a receptionist in the library, and once they graduate, they never have to step into another library for the rest of their lives, right? But then they also have jobs, so like our ag majors can have an opportunity to work in the greenhouse or go work out in the barn. Some of our professors employ students to work on like different research projects and different things like that. And again, like, students can come and work for me for $7.25 an hour. Just throwing that out there. And so students do definitely have an opportunity to work, be employed while they're at Huntington University. And they have like this wide range of jobs that they can work through, right? And so like students don't always have to just like go through Sodexo to pick up work, even though Sodexo pays $11 an hour. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, and so no, so actually Sodexo employs our own students, which is why they pay students $11 an hour. And so like the way they set that up, I'm mad about it. I lost 2 students last month because they want to work in Sodexo. It's all right. $11, $4 difference is a huge difference. But yeah, and so basically how they do things is like, that was a super specific case for a student. But generally speaking, like if a student works for Sodexo, then they can eat on a lunch break on their shift, right? And so like if a student works for 5 hours, they want to space that out for work before lunch. Then a student works for an hour, and then they eat at lunch, and then like that's kind of how they navigate business over there, and you can earn $50 for doing nothing. And so they also have a bunch of different jobs, right? They have like line jobs where they are serving students or they're working in the back and different things like that. We have like an actual chef in the Sodexo kitchen also, and so students can elect to work for him, do inventory, but they also have different like internships. And so like the student that I lost for $4, she elected to become a marketing intern for Sodexo, and so she gets like internship credits, and so she literally gets class credits while making $11 an hour without a degree. And so yes, and so they do have different jobs, and they do offer students like those different benefits. Any more questions? All right, awesome. It is 11:45. Yeah, so I have cards back there. If you have questions, I'll be sticking around for probably like another 5 to 15 minutes, depending on if someone has a question or not. And so like feel free to come up and ask questions if you have more specific questions. If you like my J's, you can tell me that too. Don't forget those cards are back there. The food trucks are out there on the mall, and so you guys can, go out, meet your students, and have lunch. The food trucks are actually good. Usually when people like supplement food trucks for eating in the cafeteria, it's always like, this food isn't as good. I should have just like spent money somewhere else. But if you don't know anything about Fort Wayne is like the cornucopia of food trucks in the Midwest. And so like feel free to go out there and grab some food and have a good day. Have a good weekend. Thank you. Oh man, I almost forgot about these. I got free t-shirts. And so yeah. And so I'll scream out a size, and if you're just like, give me that T-shirt, I'll throw it to you. And so I have, what is this? A small? Oh, hey, I like that. Oh, come on, I'm like Joe Montana.